Welcome back, my fellow duplicants, to Oxygen Not Included. This is the Megabase Challenge. Now, there was some questions about whether or not the Megabase Challenge here would survive the automation upgrade, and it has. Everything is still continuing to work. It's working just fine, but there are a couple of things that need to happen here now that the upgrade has rolled through. So if you are working on an older map and you're thinking, well, I want to go back to that now that we have the automation upgrade, well, a couple of things you're going to want to do here is do some research. So there's a lot more things that you have to research now. I mean, look at the research tree. It's pretty massive at this point. I need to unlock quite a bit of this. And what I want to do after I unlock this stuff is go back to one of the topics we were talking about last time. Now, in the last video here, we made this little Wheezewort loop that pumps around a little bit of hydrogen within this space. And it's cooling down this hydrogen. It's going through the conductivity, conductive tiles of the plastic. So the plastic is very conductive. And this was before we had the transfer plates or the thermal plates. So, plastic is still really good for this because look at its thermal conductivity. The point is, though, the Wheezeworts here are cooling down the hydrogen. The hydrogen is cooling down the crude oil. The crude oil cannot get very cold if it goes below 40 degrees Celsius or negative 40 degrees Celsius, which is very low for these Wheezeworts. I'm not even sure they can go that low. It will freeze into a solid. So essentially what I have to do here is take this crude oil and use it for some cooling. Now, the things that I want to cool here is these polymer presses, and I want to see how well this works. So one of the topics we had in the last video here, it was a while ago. It's been 3 weeks since we've actually visited this base here. So one of the comments, and a lot of other people were echoing the same sort of thing. So Bitter Cynic here says, polymer presses put out a lot of heat, really a lot. If you tend to run it for a long time, you really might just want to put this in a cold biome. However, I have another plan for that biome, and since this is kind of a map that was from a few versions before, the cold biomes, at least in kind of the map that I have loaded, are not very big. I don't have a lot for cold biomes, at least down here, and the only other one I found was way over here on the right, which is also very, very small. Now, one of the new pieces of equipment that you're able to find at least potentially buried or somewhere inside of one of these cold biomes is kind of that crystal cooler. Now, there's a whole long name to it, but like a hydrogen crystal cooler, you feed it hydrogen gas and it creates negative 400 degrees cooling capacity. So that can be used to potentially cool down these polymer presses. If we look at the polymer presses here and we look at the refinement for the polymer presses, we can see here, what I'm trying to get at here is the amount of watts in heat that it puts out, which is 162.5, which is a lot. I'm guessing that's more, once I get a few of these together, it's going to be more than what I have for the Wheezewort. And I have not seen or done any research on exactly how many watts of cooling you can get out of a Wheezewort here, unless it says somewhere. It looks like it can go down to negative 60 degrees, so it is possible, well, maybe. It looks like it's possible to freeze up some crude oil, so hopefully I'll be able to move that out before it gets too frosty. Okay, so the other thing that is now a part of the game here is that I don't have any automation wires that I could run to this thermal switch. So I have thermal switches, and out of curiosity, I wonder if I can make this. What if these switches work old school style? Hey, you know what? They still work old school style. That's cool. So I don't have to run an automation wire to that. And I actually don't even have that because I don't have any automation unlocked. Cool. I was thinking I'd have to jump inside of here and actually rewire this thing, but it doesn't look like I need to. At least for right now. One of the things is I could still use the automation block, which is a wire clamp, or the automation wire bridge. No, that's not it. There is a sensor that lets you turn the power on and off, and it's somewhere here. There it is, a power shutoff, and I could place one of those down and still control this pump that way. So I guess there's solutions to all my problems here. I didn't know if I was going to have to jump into debug mode or something and get all crazy with it. Looks like I'm moving through the research quite quickly though, so that's good. At this point, let's go ahead and try to move some of these polymer presses. They need to, living down here in this space isn't really going to work. I kind of want to put them up in their own spot. It'll be nice, though, to get back into the Megabase Challenge, mostly because they're shorter episodes, so it's a lot easier for me to manage. With all of this automation upgrades, I mean, I had some extremely long recordings that I had to do, and it was, things were getting really complicated. So one of my previous videos was using mechanized airlocks as a conveyor system, and I thought that was really interesting. And one of the things that we can do here is we can actually build on top of these mechanized airlocks like so, and potentially hook them up to a timer to drop things from them. So that's kind of what I want to explore right here. So I'm going to use a polymer press, and I'm going to put it right up here. And I know that the block kind of falls off on the edge, so right in between these two tiles. So if I put the polymer press right here, and well, maybe I want to move this down just a little bit, but what I should see, no, cancel, is that should be able to open up and actually drop the plastic down, which will be really useful. So if we open all of those at the end of the day, rather than sweeping up the plastic will just drop into one pile. So it's a little less movement. If we wanted to get real fancy about it, we could set up a whole lot of these. Also, as well, of using fertilizer makers and do the same sort of thing and convey all the product to one single spot. You know, maybe up over here, something like that. So we can just pick it up right here and then deliver it right to the storage compactor or something crazy like that. So I'm going to start off relatively conservative, and I'm just going to have 3 polymer presses. Okay, so one thing I don't have is like a real good source of just clean water at this point. So I do have, well, I mean, I do have this way over here, but that's really not anywhere close. So I'm going to make a little spot where I can kind of pump some of that liquid out, and I'll just kind of have a pool over in this area. All right, so there's my little pool over here. So this will work out. I'll get a nice amount of water over there. This is all insulated. This is a little iron door, so it will give off a little bit of heat. You know, this stuff is 46 degrees Celsius, but that isn't too terrible. That'll at least provide me with the water I need to actually do the research, because that requires a lot of liquid. So I'll be able to go over there, pump that up, and then bring it back over and start again. So that's all real good. So one of the other things I would like to have is a place to just store petroleum so that I can feed that to the polymer press to really just separate the two processes, because right now you have to come down here and you have to run the oil refinery, which consumes a duplicant, and that pumps it up to kind of just like run these polymer presses. So right now the two are very much coupled together, so I really want to go ahead and get rid of one and just kind of feed it into an area, and then when I want to I can draw out of that area directly into the polymer presses. So that's what I'm going to set up kind of in this area right here. I'd also like to have a container for carbon dioxide so that I could put in a little slickster to convert that to oil, which I could then pump back down into the system as well, you know, at some point there. So I'd like to just have a couple of containers to kind of make all of that work. So you can see what I'm doing right here. I'm just preparing to take some of this petroleum and run it right up into that little tank over there. So that'll be good. Bam! Look at how fast they're building there. Super fast. Oh man, now we're running it some more. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and disable that for a little while. And I'm just gonna use some normal pipes just to kind of get rid of some of this stuff right here. And then I'll work on just deconstructing it and all that fun stuff. As long as this stuff just isn't stuck in here, that'll be good. From the looks of this, I'm just going to restructure this to be a power plant at some point. Alright, so focusing back on this polymer press, I want to get power up there. So I got to use the heavy watt joint plate right here. So the heavy watt wires still exist, even though I don't have the conductive wires quite unlocked at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and place this right here, so that way I can pull the power from what I have going on down here. And as I said before, this is probably going to become a power plant at some point. So might as well just continue to draw off of that current system here so that I can plug in these guys up top. Even though a conductive wire would be a better option after going through something like a transformer or something like that, I'm going to roll with it because that's what I got going on. Bam. Welcome to horrible decor, but that's okay. This is all behind doors and everything, so this area is kind of nasty. I can roll with it. I'm really looking forward to building some door compressors here to really compress down some areas that I previously just used a high pressure gas vent in order to achieve that same sort of function. So this chlorine down here, I really don't have a use for it at the moment. You know, same with this carbon dioxide. But it would be great at some point to actually empty this carbon dioxide right down here to where I could have a little slickster or something running around and, you know, give it a purpose. And then once oil builds up down here, pump it away. So speaking of ventilation, all of this really needs to feed back over here. This is a pretty simple setup. I like it. I'm going to make sure I use gas bridges here to combine those tiles as they're feeding out so that, you know, the equipment doesn't jam up on itself. Everything's going to join up into this area right there. Oh, I don't have the high pressure vent anymore? Or is it just because I don't have plastic? No, I simply don't have it researched. My poor duplicates, this entire time they're working so hard to research like crazy. Oh, look at them go. Where's the high pressure gas vent now? Why don't I have that? What? It's right there. Oh, because I need refined metal. Crap. All of the stuff that I already have built, like, requires refined metal. It's such a weird way to kind of come back into a base now and have it not be... You already have equipment. Don't destroy it until you have something to make it work. I can use a rock granulator, or I could use a metal refinery, which I do have, but that will heat up liquid. But you know what? That's okay, considering I have cool liquid here already. Yeah, but the problem is it takes a massive amount of energy. Oh, but guess what? I have massive amount of energy right here. So it looks like I can use a metal refinery and just put it down here. Wow, this thing doesn't need to be built of anything crazy. Cool. Let's make it out of granite. And I'll just hook this pump into this line because, ooh, I need a transformer there. And you know, one of the things I can do with a metal refinery is I can use valves so that I can pump in liquid, right, to this thing, and then have that liquid circulate back around inside of it. So maybe that'll be the one thing we actually get to do this episode that's kind of, you know, tricky or sciencey, because I'm kind of already running out of time tonight. And I didn't get to the point of actually liquid cooling the polymer process. So let's try that. Let's make that work. So we'll take the liquid pipes, but we're going to make it out of abyssite. So in over here, we'll be feeding this guy. But then I'm just going to have it'll be able to go out and go back in. So, but it also has to have a loop. So it's got to have an option. So if I just use a liquid valve for A and then the liquid valve for B sort of thing. So this will be B, so that's for back, and A is just going to go right back around. That'll work out pretty good. So using the abyssite, you know, we can either circulate right back in like that, or if it's open up the other way, we can then feed it back over here to the right. Now the idea though is that we got to watch those temperatures really close so that we don't end up making this too hot, and then that breaks the pipe and lets a bunch of natural gas loose inside of this area at a quite high temperature. Actually, it might just turn into petroleum first and break the pipe. I'm not sure. I don't think so, because it actually contains liquid. So maybe not. The main thing being is that I got to go like this. So that's my return line. So the line out will just come over here, and then I'll have a couple of options again of what I want to do with this. I think one option is that it's going to pump up here, or somewhere around here, and that'll be just an area where some oil will build up, and then I'll be able to pull the heat off of that. The other option though is that I want it to be able to feed this guy down here. I don't know if I need two, but I'm going to build two for the sake of it at this point. So that's a line in and then a line back, so that I can do that same sort of method that if I need to get back over here, I can do that. There you go. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the high pressure gas vent here, I read this wrong. It just takes a refined metal, 200 kilograms of it, and some plastic, which I just kind of read that wrong. So any of these will actually work once I get a little liquid to actually make this refinery operational. So I'm going to go ahead and take the return lines and leave these on 0. Okay, so if I turn this on for a little bit, I'll start to move a little bit of liquid over here inside of the metal refinery. How much can I move though? Or at least how much can I store inside of that? That's what I want to know. Right now, it's got to tell me somewhere. Apparently it already contains a little bit of crude oil. I think it was something like 700 kilograms. So as long as that is above 500 kilograms and we're above that temperature, I'll start to pump a little bit. So I can just kind of cycle this on and off. I'll slow it down for us so we can see what happens here. Metal refinery, you can see what it's doing. It's taking in all of this crude oil. And you can see the little indication here of just how much liquid it has. I really can't make any of these gates either without the refined metals. So this thing is like absolutely key to my survival at this point. I guess the advantage of doing it this way, potentially, as long as I'm very, very careful with it, is that I don't have to run this pump each and every time. I don't know if that's really worth it, but hey, it is. It is what it is. So let's go ahead and make some wolframite. So we can see right here, the temperature of this liquid went up to 64.9 degrees Celsius. So that got pretty hot. I'm not so sure that this is going to work out for very long. But what we can see here is that it's, you know, there's still, the quantities are maybe recombining? I don't know. Let's see what happens when I make some iron ore. Or how about 2x for the iron ore? Bam, look at that, 118 degrees Celsius. So at one point I was running an experiment over a couple weekends ago of actually using this liquid and feeding it into another chamber to create an area of really high temperature. Now, really high temperature, I guess, that's kind of a relative term. What I could do is I could use petroleum inside of here. And petroleum can go up to about 538 degrees Celsius before it turns into a gas. So it's possible to create an area that is hot enough to cook sand, or to cook dirt into sand, by just using the hot water off of your metal refinery, or in this case, the hot petroleum. Now, the one disadvantage of the petroleum is its thermal conductivity is quite low. So there were some other liquids that I was looking at, such as, crude oil, which is a little lower temperature, but it's still got a thermal conductivity of 2. You know what, I think it was, if I could find it right here, some naphtha right there. It has a very, very low thermal conductivity. So I guess, I don't know, 2 is about as good as it got, but that was something I was playing with right there. That's one way of making an area that's quite hot, so keep that in mind. Let you think about that one for a little bit. I'm sure you guys can come up with some cool stuff, and maybe at some point here we'll actually try it out, or maybe do an experiment on that. For now, I've created at least a little bit of iron at this point, 200 kilograms worth of it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little gas vent right there. I even have the automation tab now, so that's cool. From the looks of it though, well, let's go ahead and make a few more iron ore. I think I have, I'm only at 123 degrees Celsius, or, maybe even hotter by the time it comes out. The point is, I'm still, you don't want to, you can't pump it out until it's, until you're just about at a disaster level. So here we go, running the refinery again. And the liquid is now 160 degrees Celsius. Okay, so I think I'm still good. But this time, just because of it, I'm going to go ahead and turn this down to 0 and this one up to maximum. And we're going to feed it right back into here, and we're going to see what happens as far as the temperature is concerned. Because it's kind of fun, even though it's kind of hard to sense the temperature of what you're going to have inside of here, because you don't have an inline temperature gauge as far as, these hoses are concerned. But we're pumping this back out at 240 degrees Celsius. Watch what happens. So we've definitely increased the temperature of this crude oil a little bit. I mean, if you're looking very, very closely, we have. So at this point, it might just be worthwhile to have this just pump out and make as much iron ore as I really can. You know, let's at least build it up. And I'm just going to feed it right back into here. And that'll absorb that heat. My duplicants don't have enough to do. Do some more research. You've not finished everything. Look at Marie, she just kind of throws it over here in a pile and just keeps going. Check this out. Whoop. Just kind of like chucks it over there. So look at this funness. Alright, so 23 degrees. The temperature's going up inside of here. I feel like this is a fairly effective system to refine metal. Look at that. It's super hot. And yet, that temperature is going to continue to drop down because look at all this nice cold hydrogen and everything we have around it. So here's where I could set up some limits, right? So that was right around 20 degrees Celsius. So, alright. So I have some controls at this point, right? I can control the temperature that we have going out, which is 25 degrees Celsius, which isn't too bad. And I know when I come back, it looks like we end up at 40 or so in the crude oil. Might even end up hotter. So this has all sorts of different crude oil inside of it, but you can see we're fairly close right there. Alright, so let's take a little bit closer look here. So the temperature that we have inside of here, we have some that is incredibly hot at 320 degrees Celsius. Why? Why do I have some that's super hot? That's not what I want. I want it to go away. Uh-oh. Oh! Oh no! There's something wrong with my feedback loop. It's now making everything that comes out of here. Uh-oh. Okay, let's hopefully get rid of all of that crude oil and get back to something more reasonable. 320 degrees is hot. So 178? I'm not so sure this is adding up. Maybe the feedback loop is just not a good idea. I think one thing is for sure that is a lot of heat that comes off of that refinery. A massive amount. Okay, so that's a little bit more reasonable. 118 degrees Celsius. I don't know how reasonable that is, but so really this thing has to be off, really, because it's right now it's on and it's pumping in crude oil at a higher temperature. So that's what's going on. Hot stuff is getting in. I had that switch backwards. So that was my problem right there. Well, at this point, I might as well make sure I get this crude oil back over here to start cooling down. So I'm going to run this continuous, but I think that'll be the end of my video here today because I'm pretty much out of time. It's been about an hour, and that's about what I want as far as this megabase challenge, though. But there we have it. At least this is some sort of idea of how to get some really, really hot liquid out of here, and I'm sure we can do some cool things like, you know, making some more sand, or I don't know, maybe there's some other things we can do with this. Maybe we can use this to make our little naphtha furnace or something like that. You'll have to let me know down there in the comment section below. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little episode here of Oxygen Not Included, and if I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Have a great day, guys. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar out. Wait, what even happened? It dropped down in temperature. What? It's already 27.9? What is this madness? I thought that was super hot. But no, once it filled back up, boom, it dropped like crazy. Huh. That was interesting. When it was down here, it was hot. But then once we filled it up, it got cold.